to day 11 of Natural Beauty Summit's Detox Your Lifestyle and Reset for 2022. Today, I am so excited to be talking to Cherie Hager, who's the founder or co-founder and CEO at Saalt. And if you're not familiar with the company, they started out making menstrual cups, and the brand has really evolved. And I really want to talk about this because our menses is something that we as women or other people who menstruate have to kind of go through on a monthly basis for years. And that yields a tremendous amount of waste. And most of the products that we have conventionally been exposed to have been causing more problems than doing good. So this segment is about maybe, possibly, and I'm really advocating for this, introducing a big change in how we manage our monthly menses. And we're gonna talk about this, but I have become a huge advocate and fan of the menstrual cups. I've had a lot of questions around period underwear, and we're gonna be talking about all of those things with Cherie. And what she's doing is, it's not just about the products, but it's also about the impact. And many of us in North America aren't aware of things like period poverty around the world, and other people, women, girls who don't have access to some of the basic necessities of managing this monthly occurrence that happens for us. We're also talking about period health, and just how to have a better cycle. And I'm really excited to be sharing this. But this is definitely a segment where we're gonna be talking about some stuff that maybe you don't wanna be listening to at the dinner table, I don't know. But I'm really, really thrilled to be sharing it with you nonetheless. So stay tuned for Cherie Hager. Natural Beauty Summit's Detox Your Right Lifestyle and Reset for 2022. I have the immense pleasure of chatting with Cherie Hager, who is the CEO and co-founder at Saalt, which is a period care company. And we're going to be talking about period cups, period underwear, and this is such an important topic to me, especially because not only am I a user of feminine or period care cups, also formerly known as feminine care products.
That's right.
But I really believe that this is the future of period care. Now, welcome to the show, Cherie. Great to have you here.
It's great to be here. I'm thrilled to be here. And we had just talked about the correction of feminine care because there's, trans men and those that are non-binary that also menstruate. And so feminine care is a little bit of an outdated term. And so we're trying to use period care to be an inclusive term.
Right. Well, that is great to know. And I wasn't on my radar, obviously, not just because I'm not in the business as you are, but because periods are not something that we talk about that much, and certainly not openly, certainly not when we're talking about, in a context of beauty and health, but it's so pertinent. I mean, one of the reasons why we're having this discussion is because over the course of a person's cycling years, there's typically a waste in plastic form of 11,000 sanitary care products that aren't getting recycled and is just creating more and more waste.
So much waste. Yep.
Not just about the waste, but also about the health factor. Because what is in those like tampons and pads, and like how do those things affect your health? And we got a lot to cover here, girl. So I want to
excited to share.
I mean, I want to start with your story about, what really drove you to create Salt.
Yeah. So my husband and I both come from Latin heritage. He was born in Venezuela and I'm Argentine. And I was talking with his aunt in Venezuela. If you know the situation there, it's very dire. Dictatorship plus high inflation, equals not very many products on shelves. And she was telling me about the situation there. And I wondered what I would do. I have 5 daughters. And I thought, what would I do in that situation for all these disposable products that we can't access in these type of situations? And all of us who've now been through this pandemic know a little bit more of how that feels. We can see how fast grocery store shelves can clear. So I really thought about our dependence on this disposable supply chain and what I would do. And that's when I was first introduced to the menstrual cup. And I thought, just like everyone does, what is this? This thing looks big. How do you use it? And why have I not heard of this my whole life? It was invented in the 1930s by an American actress. Yes, so it's been around a long time. But we haven't heard about it because disposables have made more of a headway and they're more for profit. And reusables take a little bit of a learning curve and a behavior change to adopt. So I tried the menstrual cup, fell in love with it. It lasts 10 years. You can wear it for up to 12 hours, holds 3 times to 4 times more than a tampon does. And you never have to visit the tampon aisle again. And I just thought, oh my gosh, where has this been my whole life? And as I started to tell friends about it, I realized that, like you said, there's a lot of stigma around periods. And so there's just not a lot of conversation, let alone conversation about switching from something comfortable and, something you're used to, like pads and tampons, to something reusable that takes, like I said, a little bit more learning to figure out. But I knew it was an amazing product. And we saw these wonderful clean beauty movements and people, more aware of what they're putting into their bodies. And that's where I was at. I wanted to save on waste and I wanted to make sure I was doing something healthier for my body. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But felt like there was really space to tell this reusable story, this more sustainable story for period care. And that's how we started Salt and, introduced period cups. And then last year we introduced period underwear and are so excited to have this fully reusable, sustainable solution for the mainstream consumer now.
That's so awesome. I mean, I have a few friends who are really on the cutting edge of what's happening in like beauty and health. So I was introduced to the cup a little while ago, but I remember my experience was like, oh my God, like, what do you do with this? Like, what does that mean? How do you, like with a pad, you just like take it off and throw it out. And that's also the case with like tampons. But this is like, you take it out, you dump it, you put it back in. And it's just a different way of thinking about it. And honestly, at the beginning, I was like, I don't know if this is for me. And I had a little bit of a hard time. And I think back then, there wasn't as much education. Like on your website, you have so many different ways that you can fold it and put it in. But I didn't even think about the fact that until you talked about it, it's hugely cost effective. And guys, just a warning, I just want to show these to you guys, because for those of you who've never seen a menstrual cup, this is what it looks like. It's
I had a couple here too.
yeah, it's super soft and squishy, and it's clean, and it's got this little pull tab, which kind of like a tampon. And I don't know how you do it, but I just kind of like to fold it like this so that it goes in, it's teeny tiny, and it goes in like a tampon and it pops open and it just catches everything. And then, like you said, 10 years you can use this, which is crazy. You think of how much you spend on pads. And this is what, like $30-$40. And in that range, I think all menstrual cups are in that range.
At that range. We're on the lower end. We're more affordable. We're at 29. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, no brainer. And $29 is like what you spend on like maybe like 3 to 4 months of periods.
Yep,
Never
exactly.
mind others. Yeah. So, and it is shockingly comfortable. It's not like, and I'm not just bringing these on so I can show you how awesome they are.
And great stress relievers. Yeah.
They actually are. But, I think the term sanitary care products has kind of left us with this impression that we're doing something really like sanitary and great for our bodies, but like bleach is sanitary. I would love to get your perspective on what are some of the maybe like toxic things that we can find in most conventional pads and tampons. And you don't have to name brands. And this is not about like, dismissing any brands, but this is really about just getting the education out there. Like, why do we want to move away from tampons and pads? Especially.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I was going to touch on something you mentioned with the cup and your experience first, and I'll get into that. But you mentioned it being more comfortable, and that's what's lost with people. They might switch to the cup because they say, hey, it's more sustainable, or it'll save them money because it'll, save $1,500 over its 10-year life, or, and it's saving the planet. But it was, for me too, from my own experience, it was such a comfortable experience and felt a lot cleaner. People think menstrual cups, might be gross because, oh, you have to wash it out, you got to touch blood or whatever the reasons are. But it's a cleaner experience because you're not dripping into a pad and you don't have the same odors. It's odor free and it just, stays in, you pull it out, and it's a very clean experience and super comfortable, very sensationless. So I just wanted to put it out there that the comfort is one of the number one factors for using a menstrual cup. It's just a lot more comfortable than tampons. So you mentioned tampons and pads. When I first was researching into menstrual cups, started learning about what's in our pads and tampons, and that got me a lot, really concerned for my health, and then also for my daughter's health. So obviously, tampons and pads are made out of cotton. They have rayon in there, which is a synthetic material that's chemically treated. You have fragrances in there that, are made of various chemicals. And then it's not, all those different materials don't come white, so they have to be bleached. So they go through a bleaching process, and that usually leaves some kind of chemical byproducts, including dioxin, which has been known to, cause cancer, autoimmune disorders, and then also reproductive issues. And, hopefully trace amounts, but over time, all those chemicals and pesticides and fragrances, they add up in the fatty tissues because you're menstruating for 40 years of your life. And so it adds up over time, and then it can cause these other issues down the road. So there's just a lot that are in tampons and pads that aren't required to be disclosed by the FDA. So I know that there's been a lot of lobbying out there from lawmakers to try to find some ways so that the ingredients can be disclosed, but hasn't happened yet. So there's a lot that we just don't know. And then whether you're using organic tampons or conventional tampons, it disrupts the pH balance of your vaginal canal because your vagina is self-cleaning, self-regulating. And those tampons are really good at absorbing. So they absorb all the fluids in your vagina. So what happens if anyone, has felt pulling out a dry tampon, you just don't have that same wonderful, healthy balance that you can maintain with a menstrual cup, because this doesn't, absorb any of the fluids. It's only absorbing what's dripping into the cup from your cervix. And so, this it helps you maintain that balance. So, along with absorbing everything, it also absorbs all of the bad bacteria. So your vagina self-regulates, it tries to get out the bad bacteria, but it can't get it out there because it's all absorbed there, and it creates this breeding ground for bacteria. And then when you pull out a dry tampon, what happens is you can sometimes get microtearing, or you can get fibers that are left there. And that microtearing is bad news because you might have staph in your vagina. And if the staph enters the bloodstream, that can lead to TSS. So TSS started getting a really bad rap in the 1980s when companies were creating these really super absorbent tampons. And when, women were tearing them out, they would have these little micro tears. And, staph is present in like 30 to 50% of the population. It usually, doesn't cause harm. But if you have the perfect storm, which is you have staph present in the vagina, it has to be the certain type of staph that has, the toxin that creates TSS, which is like 1 to 4%. So very rare, but, still promoted this breeding ground for it because of the tampons and because of that pulling out that dry tampon and having that microtearing. So you have to have a way for it to enter the bloodstream. And if you have that perfect storm, then suddenly you have an increased risk of TSS. So although you can get TSS from any inserted product, you can even get it from pads, men can get it. There's a lot of misinformation out there about TSS, but there is an increased risk when you have these tampons. So, tampons have less associated risk, and so do other alternatives. So there's a lot of reasons not, to be wary of using disposable products.
For sure. And you touched on so much there, but I just want to clarify for those in our audience who don't know the acronym TSS, it's toxic
Oh,
shock
yes.
syndrome that we're talking about. And
Yeah.
if you, I mean, I remember, you know, in like sex ed or whatever it's called these days, in school, like in grade 4 or 5, when they were teaching us about, you know, menstruating and menses, toxic shock syndrome came up a lot, and it was this hugely terrifying thing.
Yeah.
And it actually, like, for me and my friends, and I speak from personal experience, and it might have been different for others who had a different, I guess, introduction to it, but it made us very apprehensive about using tampons altogether.
Mhm.
And just to kind of shift to, you know, using the cup, like, it's definitely more comfortable, but I didn't think about the odor thing, because, you know, you have a pad in there for like all day, and those who have experienced pads know this, and it's just messy. And the tampons are their own version of, maybe not messy, but like it causes other problems. Like how many times have we gone, you know, on a trip, and then, oh, all of a sudden we have to run to the drugstore? Well, like, I always just have one of these in my like travel toiletry bag, and it's just, you never know, right? Anyway, I want to move on and talk about period underwear as well, because to be honest, I was one of the people that used one of those first versions of period underwear that ended up having, that was found to have PFAS
If,
chemicals in it,
yeah.
PFAS.
Yeah.
So I'd love to ask you about, so that kind of freaked me out. And I've been using, you know, the cup with like some version of, like the cleanest version of like a liner that I can find for those heavier flow days. But can we just talk about PFAS or PFAS chemicals, why they're being used in period underwear, and why we need to stay away from them?
Yeah, so PFAS is used in a lot of things. It is water repellent, and it helps with, I mean, anything that you need to repel water. So they're mostly found and most famously found in Teflon pans. So if you've ever seen the documentary Dark Waters, you'll go throw away all of your Teflon pans after that. Because these PFAS chemicals are forever chemicals. They cause cancer. They never break down in the human body. So they just continue to accumulate over time. And they're literally in anything. So anything that takes Scotchgard, so your couches and different furniture or different outdoor gear. They're also found in food wrappers. Now, a lot of these, you know, fast food companies are going away from them. But whenever you have like a hamburger and it has like a water repellent layer so that it doesn't drip through, that's PFAS. So literally, I mean, when you're talking about Teflon and our food wrappers, it is just so easy to ingest, and it's everywhere. So unfortunately, it was also used in some period underwear brands, and that was, you know, as a water repellent type of factor. I know that a lot of companies are going away from that, and our period underwear is certified PFAS free. We do not treat ours with PFAS because to have it be in such a sensitive area right next to your vagina, when your vagina is very permeable. We just talked about tampons and how not only do, you know, tampons absorb everything, so they're absorbing your natural fluids, but all those pesticides and chemicals are also being, you know, absorbed into these highly permeable outer layers of your vaginal canal. And so when it's so close there, I mean, it's just a terrible place to have PFAS, whether you're ingesting it or there. So it's important to find period underwear that's PFAS free.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of like show everyone, I was traumatized by the period underwear as a result of like that outrage that came out, and I was kind of worried about trying, but you have introduced a new line, and I love this because it's so, I don't know if you guys can tell how thin this is, but it's like super, super thin, soft. And this doesn't feel like, you know, a big diaper.
Yep.
Or, you know, like I remember that first version that I had tried from a different brand, who shall not be named. I felt like I was wearing my wetsuit, but just around like as an underwear. it was really thick and it was uncomfortable. And I'm really, really excited about the evolution of these because it's such a game changer. It's like, every concern you've ever had about leaking through, like this is just kind of like your security blanket, if you will. It's your like insurance. You can put on those white pants. And using the cup
Exactly.
with the period underwear, I think has given me personally the biggest sense of like confidence to like kind of go out and be in the world and be comfortable and not worry about like, leaking through or like, oh, I can't go swimming. Or anyway, there's things that we can talk about, mishaps, period mishaps. So that can be basically mitigated with using these. So I'm a fan, obviously. I really want to convert everyone, guys. I'm not even kidding. I hated tampons and I love cups. And I think for the planet and for your health, you should totally try it. But I also want to just, given that I have you here and you're the expert, I want to talk about the cycle in general, because often we think about like cycling as like, that 1 week or 4 days or whatever our cycle is. But I would love to get some tips from you on how
Mm.
to optimize the cycle health.
Yeah, that's great. I think everybody should know more about their cycles. And I want to touch on this just because you're talking about the period underwear. I also wear tested a lot of period underwear before, as we were developing ours. And I remember telling my husband who works with me, I kept saying, the period underwear is great and it's a great backup to a cup, just like you said, but I want it to be thinner and I want it to actually make me feel dry. And that's, what led to this gusset technology that we have that is like, it's thinner than a nickel. I mean, it's ultra, ultra comfortable. It keeps you dry. It has these unique fabric channels that, takes the liquid down into this highly absorbent layer and then a leak-proof layer. And that's exactly what we set out to do, have the thinnest and most comfortable and driest gusset available. And then we also hired a French lingerie designer. And so she wanted, we wanted to everyone to feel beautiful on their period. Like you said, confident, feel free and feel beautiful. So, why not be able to feel beautiful with our period underwear?
I love that you talked about that because I'm sitting here and I'm feeling kind of like a weirdo because I have this in my hand and I can't stop touching it because it's so soft. So
It's
yes,
super
it's
soft.
meant to be like an intimate, lovely experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and totally. This is our thong, right? It's so nice. People are like, what? Period underwear and a thong? We're like, yeah, why not? Especially if you're wearing a cup, which is why, it's such a great sustainable solution to use both together, just like you said. Also, that soft material is actually made out of recycled water bottles.
Oh, I
So
did
it makes
not
it
know that.
silky
What?
soft. Yeah. Yep.
That's
So good
amazing.
sustainability there. But yeah, let's get into the cycle. I wish everybody knew more about their cycle because the menstrual cycle does not just last the 1 week that you happen to bleed, and that's your period. It lasts the entire month. So you have your bleeding phase. It's like 4 to 7 days. Then right after that, your cycle starts, going through the natural phases that lead to your period again. And you start with this follicular phase. And that phase is before ovulation. It's about a week long. This is when you start to feel great. So you've already, shed all that endometrium, you've already shed all the menses, and you just feel good. And your hormones, are all in balance. And it's really the time, like if you could schedule like an athletic competition or could schedule a test, that would be the time to do it, is a week after your period, because that's when you feel best. So I have a good friend in Australia who teaches teens about periods, and she uses different animals to describe the different phases. I love it. It's just a good visual. So she calls a period phase a sloth phase. You just feel tired, you feel a little bit like a sloth. You need to take, you need to get rest. You need to take care of yourself during that phase. And then she says, the week after that is your feline phase. It's your tigress phase. It's when you just really feel at your best. And that's because you have, testosterone and estrogen working for you. You have this elevated energy. And then you have ovulation. And ovulation just lasts like 1 to 3 days. And she calls this your peacock phase because you feel flirty, right? It's ovulation. It's the time that you most feel flirty and you just feel really confident. You feel really sexy during that phase.
And aren't there studies that talk about how women dress differently, they walk differently during those few days of ovulation?
Yeah, I mean, it's the mating phase. That's what it is. And it only lasts 1 to 3 days. And then after that, as soon as you ovulate, a lot of people sometimes will have bleeding or will have some kind of, some symptoms that come from ovulation. They might feel a little tenderness or even some cramping. And then after that, you have your luteal phase. So this is the 2 weeks before your period. And what most people don't know is this is when your PMS symptoms start. So people think that during your period is when you're really PMSing. It's actually the 2 weeks before your period that you feel it the most.
Yeah.
And sometimes I look to God and say, how come we got 1 week out of the entire month where we feel great and the rest is just like this?
Yeah.
I don't think that's really fair. But if we know that that's the case, if we're feeling a little crummy during that luteal phase, you're feeling more depressed, you feel those hormones just shift. And because of that shift, you start to feel, a little, like I said, more fatigued, and you start leading up to that period cycle where you're feeling a little bit more bloating and so forth. So don't feel like something's wrong with you during that phase. I think when I was young, I'm like, why do I feel this way? I feel more depressed at this time and I'm not even on my period. What's wrong? Well, it's normal. It's your hormones. It's the luteal phase. So I wish that every young girl knew that those 2 weeks before your period is one where you should really pay attention and take care of yourself. And then, actually, after you reach the, first 2 days of your period, after your heavy bleeding, you actually start to feel quite a bit better. So it's kind of that week and a little bit during your period that you feel your best. But don't think something's wrong with you. Just realize that it's just part of the normal flow.
Yeah, and I think period education like really has not been super out in the open. And I think we've all had that where you're like, I'm not on my period, but I'm so angry right now. I just want to punch everyone
Yeah.
in the face.
Yeah, and my friend, her name's Demi Spackenbento, and she has her Instagram is Bright Girl Health, and she calls that luteal phase your cat phase because cats can be a little touchy.
Yes,
When you have those mood swings, you're like sometimes they're cuddly and sometimes they're like get away from me, and it's just a great visual.
That's awesome. Okay, so wait, the Australian friend who had the animals, we had sloth,
Uh-huh. And then
the
your
tiger,
feline tiger, yeah, and then
and
peacock.
peacock. What came after peacock?
Then it's the cat phase.
That's the cat. Okay, so it's the same
Yeah.
person. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, same one. Yes, Demi Spackenbento, Bright Girl Health. She's such a great educator, especially for young teens, to teach them how to positively work with their cycles and take care of themselves. And my daughter, who's 14 years old, my oldest daughter, she and I took her class, and it was just fantastic.
Oh, that is awesome. I would love to include her link in the show notes as well.
Wonderful.
And then do you have any tips on like, I mean, aside from just being aware and like having the education, like, is there
Mm-hmm.
anything that you do or you do for your daughters that makes like 3 out of 4 weeks a little bit better, a little bit more balanced, if you will?
Yeah, I think the awareness really is it, because if you're feeling more fatigued, it's just taking that time for yourself. I keep, hot compresses on hand or those little rice bags, because the heating can help with both ovulation and then obviously during period cramping. My breasts get super tender during that luteal phase. It happens. I don't know if anyone else is like that because everyone has different symptoms, but I'm just, more careful. I have more comfortable bras during that time. So it's really, dependent on the symptoms that you feel, but watch for them and, realize what's going on during the month. Keep a diary. There's also the Flow app. That's great. So many great apps to track those symptoms and to be able to learn more about your body.
Those are great tips. Finally, last question, I promise. I would love for you to talk about period poverty and what we can do about it. Because I think being in this privileged world, like where we have access to everything, even during the worst of times like COVID, like there was never a time that I wasn't able to get period care products. But I think we don't really know, like we don't necessarily have that awareness about the rest of the world. So I'd love to get your thoughts on period poverty.
Yeah, well, you hit a big point for me because this is my passion. This is really why I do what we do, because period poverty is such a big problem in the world. And as soon as I learned that, when we started SALT, we decided to become a B Corp and give 2% back to donate period products to those in need, and then fund educational scholarships for girls and also initiatives in sustainability. And the reason why is because education and period poverty are uniquely tied. As soon as girls hit puberty, you start seeing school dropout rates skyrocket. And as a mom of 5 daughters, I can imagine a world where my daughters are limited in their potential and in their education for something as basic to, the human condition as a period. And I wanted to change that. So if you look at period poverty, think about this. Let's say you started your period today, but you have no period care. So would you go to work? Would you go to school? Would you feel confident talking to me on camera right now when you're worried about leaking through your pants? And this happens to 62% of the population. So there's 800 million menstruators worldwide, 500 live in period poverty, which means they lack access to, basic supplies. And what do they use? Well, they use banana leaves. They use paper torn from school books. Sometimes they use soil or ash or bits of mattress pads, or, sometimes they exchange sexual favors in order to get period care so that they can stay in school. So it's a massive problem. And we just looked at something this big and said, if something this big could keep girls in school, keep women going to work, keep their confidence, keep them having a period with dignity, it can break cycles of poverty for generations. So we've donated over 30,000 cups in 35 countries. And it is just really just drives everything we do here at SALT. The impact we make, we're literally changing lives every day. And I wish you could see the women in Nepal and Uganda and Kenya, how excited they get about using the cups because they can work for 12 hours out in the fields and they don't have to worry about washing. There's so little water that they have to work with already. And they're, constantly washing fabric, where this cup, it's just a simple rinse. There's so many reasons why it's so much better. And then the period underwear also, for those that, might have some taboos about using inserted products. Even though our adoption rates are very high, we've had so much success in places we didn't even think we would with the cups. But the period underwear, being able to give them both in tandem or let them use this as a starting point for the younger girls who might have concerns, suddenly we are solving period poverty. And it's really sustainable, reusable solutions that's going to do it. Because no matter how many tampons and pads we donate, you're covering these women and girls for 1 month. Yeah. That's what they're getting.
That's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. They need reusable products. If you think this cup lasts 10 years, we've actually stress tested it and it lasts up to 40. It lasts longer than that. So really 1 cup in the hands of a girl, who is living in poverty changes their life, their menstrual life forever. And we're menstruating about 8 years. So 40 years, but 8 years total of our life were spent menstruating, and they get that back.
Wow. That's incredible. I think you've hit every note for me. Like, I didn't know that these were made from recycled plastic bottles. That is incredible. Like, if you guys can touch this, you wouldn't even believe what I'm saying right now. And I love that you guys are doing that. And we're going to be including the link to SALT. You can buy them directly from your website, but you guys are also in Target and really everywhere. Guys, if you're even like kind of thinking about it, I think if you're next time you're in the period aisle, just look at every period aisle now has some menstrual cup in there.
Yeah,
and
we
that's
have more
amazing,
alternatives.
because that was not the case. The first time I tried to get a menstrual cup, it was, only certain locations, only one drugstore. And now it's widely available. I love that it's at Target because, you go to Target for so many other things. It just kind of makes it a little bit more of a one-stop shop. You're welcome, Target.
No, it's great. They're a fantastic partner for us. And these companies don't necessarily want to bring in these reusable products because it's taking the customers out of their disposable aisle and they're, money-making businesses. But there are retailers like Target who are very progressive in their thinking. They have a very strong sustainability mission. And because of that, they're investing in more sustainable brands. And we're seeing it across the board. We have our period underwear in Nordstrom online and Bloomingdale's in store. And it's amazing to see these brands that are now thinking and responding to the consumers that want something better for their bodies and the planet.
All right, guys. So if you haven't already bought yourself a Christmas gift, get one of these. I promise it might be weird at first, but you will love it. Do you guys have videos or like you have demos and how-tos, instructions everywhere, right?
We do. If you look on YouTube, we have playlists, they have instructional playlists that answer all the questions. And we also have on Facebook what's called the SALT Cup Academy. It has over 25,000 members. You can go join, ask any of your questions. It's like TMI all the time.
I love it.
We have the most amazing just customer service team. So if you need anything, we call them cup coaches. So if you want a hands-on help, just email us, message us, go on Facebook. You can find us anywhere.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Cherie, for doing the work that you do. It is so great having you on the show. It's so great having people like you in this world that's changing, everyday things for the better. So thank you.
Thank you.